Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And finals week is almost wrapping up, so after this week, I'll finally be able to go home and I'll finally be able to relax and focus nothing on giving basketball news. But regardless, let's actually go into this basketball news right now. So for the first segment, we're going to be talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. They ended up winning in game one of the series. They matched up against the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks, I feel a little bit odd about that team. I'm not even going to lie. I feel a little bit odd about that team right now. So we're definitely going to talk a lot about that in the first segment. Now, in the second segment, we're also going to talk about the Celtics and their blowout win. And again, both of the games last night were blowouts, and it was kind of a boring game, honestly, to watch both of them, because the game was sort of decided already before the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, I was hoping that the games would be a little bit closer for the playoffs, but that's sort of how it goes. And then in the third segment, Austin Rivers had some comments directed towards NFL players. Well, not really directed towards NFL players, more so directed towards NFL athletes and NBA athletes. And J.J. Watt actually responded to Austin Rivers and his comments, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that as well. We also have a special fourth segment coming in, so be sure to stay in tune for that as well. I reveal that at the end of the third segment. But before I begin with Game 1 of the Thunder, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and talk about this game as best we can, because as I said, it was a blowout win for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I'm just pulling up the box scores real quick, and hold on just 1 second. Still waiting for the box scores to load, but essentially the final score was 117-95, I believe. Yes, that's the final score of this game, 117-95, and Luka and Kyrie in this game, they played rather poorly, and that's sort of obviously that's sort of the main reason as to why they lost, because they played so poorly. And I really didn't expect them to play this bad, especially coming off of the series against the Clippers where they ended up beating them. Kyrie was playing very well for a majority of that series, and so was Luka. Luka wasn't really shooting that efficient, but in terms of the numbers and in terms of production, he was doing more than enough to ensure the team victory in the first round. So, just looking over the box scores for the Mavericks, Luka ended the game with 19 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. Obviously, that's very, very underwhelming for someone like Luka Doncic to only score 19 points in the first game of a playoff series. It's very unlike him. And Kyrie, he ended the game with only 20 points. Kyrie was the team's leading scorer. And being the leading scorer with only 20 points, that's not going to be enough with this Mavs team in order to win against this OKC team. Because while OKC does have an experience, they do still have a lot of great players, and they still do have a lot of good players in their rotation. And they also have considerable defense as well, much better defense than the Dallas Mavericks, in my opinion, with Shai being able to get steals, Lou Dort being able to play the perimeter, Chet being able to get blocks, things of that nature. And looking more into the box scores for Dallas, Luka shot 6 for 19 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3. Kyrie shot 7 of 14 from the field. So Luka shot very, very inefficiently. And honestly, he's been shooting really inefficiently throughout the entirety of the postseason. Throughout the entire Clippers series, he was just throwing the ball up. And a lot of the times they were really tough shots that he was throwing up, and they weren't going in. And he's used to taking difficult shots, and there's nothing wrong with taking difficult shots unless unless you make them. Like, if you're making them, by all means, go ahead and take them. But if you're missing them, maybe taking those shots isn't the best way to get into a rhythm. But what do I know about basketball more than Luka? Regardless, it's really been the shooting woes for Luka are really what's hurting the Dallas Mavericks, and really what almost costed them losing the series against the Clippers. Because if Kyrie didn't show up, or if none of the other players were to show up against the Clippers, and if the Clippers didn't play that bad, then chances are if the Clippers didn't collapse like they usually do, or if Kawhi was even in the series, playing majority of the series, chances are that they probably would have already lost, simply because of Luka's poor shooting performances. And not many people are really talking about that, honestly. They aren't talking about Luka's shooting woes in this postseason, which is honestly very surprising, considering how, if this was LeBron, everyone would be on him. If this was LeBron, everyone would be on LeBron shooting 25% from three. Every single person in the world. I kid you not. And I don't understand why they aren't I totally understand why they aren't giving Luka that same type of attention or treatment, but still, that's very, very as a LeBron fan, it irks me, because LeBron would never be able to waltz by and play this bad and get away with it. He just won't, and it really sort of frustrates it's just irking me as a LeBron fan. But now let's move on to the Thunder side of the debacle and the situation. So Shai Gilgeous, he ended the game with 29 points, 9 assists, and 9 rebounds, and obviously was the best player for the Thunder and their team. Jalen Williams, he ended the game with 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Chet Holmgren, he ended the game with 19 points and 7 rebounds as well. And let's see, looking the rest of the box scores, Aaron Wiggins, excuse me. Jesus, I'm used to Andrew being in the league for so long, I accidentally said Andrew. That's my apologies. Aaron Wiggins had 16 points, and Jalen Williams had 11 points. So, obviously, the scoring for the OKC was just much better than the scoring for Luka Doncic and the rest of the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, Shai going 8 for 19 from the field is obviously, it's much better than what Luka shot from the field, and the points production is definitely much better than what Luka shot from the field as well. Chet Holmgren, he's obviously been hyper efficient, as he always is. 8 for 16 from the field, 19 points. And Jalen Williams was not that efficient from the field today, but he still made it count where he needed it to. 6 for 15 from the field with 18 points. And everyone else on the team, except for Lou Dort, they all shot rather efficiently in this win over the Dallas Mavericks. And with Luka playing as bad as he was playing, it was almost like a surefire way that the OKC would end up coming out. But honestly, I'm very surprised with OKC and their recent playoff successes, because as of right now, they have yet to lose a playoff game. And I definitely would not have expected this from the youngest team making it to the NBA playoffs as the 1 seed, and then also being the young, and also the lack of experience that this team has, due to the fact that they are the youngest team to ever make the 1 seed. They've never been in a playoff matchup before, up until now. And honestly, it's really shocking to me, because I did not expect this OKC team to even be able to win a playoff series I never imagined that they would be able to do that. But granted, going up against the Pelicans in the first round, it was a surefire bet that they were going to end up making it to the second round. So this series right here is the series that sort of really tests OKC and just how good they really are. And if they can win this matchup, then they might have a pretty solid chance against whoever they're going to match up between the Timberwolves or the Denver Nuggets. So it's one of those two teams that's going to end up playing these guys. And I feel like I've been disrespecting Shai like through a majority of the series and through a majority of the season, because Shai's been putting up at least 29 points in almost every single game. Like every time I look at the box scores, he has like 29 or 31 points, and he shoots very efficiently from the field. And on top of that, he doesn't take that many three-pointers. Like, he shoots this efficiently from the field without taking that many three-pointers. And got Crucial PG in the chat. He's saying Luka stinks. That's funny. What makes you say that? Is it just like the recency bias that he's got? Or, I mean, like, I know he's been shooting really bad in the postseason, and like he was a little bit inefficient, but it's not like he's bad. Crucial PG has another thing to say in the chat. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Brunson are better. Kyrie is better too. Whoa, okay, that's actually, we got a little debate here now. So, but Kyrie is the second option for the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, he's good. I'm definitely like not saying that he's bad for a second option, but I mean, he's really good for a second option. But I wouldn't really say he's like, better than Luka in this scenario. I mean, he's the second option for a reason, and they give the ball to Luka all the damn time for a reason. I understand that like the recent shooting struggles, they're like a big problem for Luka, and like that definitely like sort of influences the opinion that he's kind of like he's bad and things of that nature. But it's really just like, I mean, this should be like expected, like here and there. Like sometimes with the shots that he takes, you're bound to have a couple of bad games, and you're bound to have a couple of games where you just, but it's not like his production was like hindered a little bit. I mean, he still averaged like 29, 9, and 9 in that first round of the postseason, which is basically average Luka production. Like, I mean, what more can you really ask for other than that? And not only that, but I mean, Kyrie didn't really about SGA and about Brunson. I do think that Brunson is somewhat making a case for being the best point guard in the league, and thus putting him above Luka if he is the best point guard. Because it would make sense, being that the best point guard in the league would have to be above Luka. But SGA, I think this playoff series is going to sort of help us determine like where the standings really are. I think that's sort of how it's going to work. So Crucial PG also has everyone who leaves the Mavericks gets better. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. That does, I mean, especially like since we are talking about Jalen Brunson, he is a prime example of someone leaving the Mavericks and him getting better and things of that nature. But it did end up working out for the best in the end. I mean, they did get Kyrie Irving, and I don't really want to say that it's the players' fault, but I mean, I just think that like they're playing under a system to where like, it's Luka and it's Luka's team, and you got to give Luka the ball, and you got to allow Luka to make the plays for the team, things of that nature. And he's obviously going to have the ball in his hands a lot more than the rest of the other players and outshine the rest of the other players. And the reason why I believe that, if I remember correctly, Jalen Brunson was able to outshine Luka was because Luka was sitting out in some crucial games, and Jalen Brunson was the one putting up all the scoring. If I remember correctly, the one thing that I do remember with those series was just how dominant Jalen Brunson was in the painted area, and how ridiculous his float game was, and how amazing his mid-range was in the postseason. And like if he was able to keep it up, he could be a solid second option for the Mavericks, and only for a very, very low price as well. But obviously, like the Mavericks, they didn't want to re-sign him for whatever reason, and they didn't want him back. And Knicks were able to grab him in free agency, and boom. So that's basically all I have for this first segment. So with that, we are out of time. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment, talking about the Celtics game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which happened before the Mavericks game. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Celtics and the Cavs series. Well, the first game of the Celtics and the Cavs series. And basically, like, I don't really think there's, like, a need to go that much in depth into this game. But before I begin, I'll explain why. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and go into the second segment, which is going to be talking about the Boston Celtics and their recent Game 1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Excuse me. But, so, the game started out really competitive. Like, the game started out very, very competitive to start. Like, they both played very well. They were, like, firing at each other. And there was only like a 6-point difference between the Celtics and the Cavs in the first quarter. And Boston scored 40 points in that first quarter, and the Celtics scored, 34. Then, after that first quarter, the game and the scoring slowed to a halt. The Celtics in the second quarter, they scored 19 points. So, barely even half of what they scored in the first. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up scoring 15, which was, again, which is actually like more than half of what they scored in the first quarter, but still, going from a very, very high scoring first quarter, 40 points, to going to 19 points is a ridiculous fall off. And the fact that the Cavs fell off at that same time, that was their window of opportunity to sort of make the game a little bit more competitive. And that was their window of opportunity to make the game even. Because the final score of this game was 120 to 95. And what happened in the second half, well, particularly what happened in the fourth quarter, was the biggest difference maker. And that's really where the flip switched. So the third quarter, the Cavs, they ended up scoring 33 the Celtics ended up scoring 33, and then the Cavs ended up scoring 28. But then that fourth quarter, Celtics scored 28 in the fourth, and then the Cavs scored 18 in the fourth. So if they would have taken advantage for Boston's lack of offense in the second quarter, maybe this would have played out a little bit differently. But the way that the Celtics have been playing this year, and the way that this has gone, and like the way that it's been in the postseason, they really know how to handle things when like the going gets tough. And like eventually they're going to go on that run. And if you want to keep yourself in competition with them, and if you want to make sure that you're not going to have to be playing catch up, you're going to have to be the one that takes advantage of lackluster performances like that second quarter where they only scored 19 points. And because this Celtics team is loaded with talent, just absolutely loaded with talent in the entire starting lineup. And just going over the box scores of this game, Drew Holiday, he ended the game with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. Jason Tatum, he ended the game with 18 points and 11 rebounds and 5 assists. Jaylen Brown ended the game with 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And Derek White ended the game with 25 points and 5 assists. Now, Porzingis has yet to return from his injury, but that does not mean that the team doesn't have a competent center in their rotations. Al Horford, who has been a longtime Celtic and has been arguably one of the most critical role players for this Celtics team, it's really it's honestly a blessing to have somebody like Al Horford to be able to come in and replace Kristaps when it's looking all dreary. Because while he is rather old compared to Kristaps, he still is rather competent at defending. Rather competent. And he's also a very competent corner shooter, which is really what the Celtics value. Their spacing as well on the offensive side of the court. They shoot a lot of three-pointers, remember that. And speaking of a lot of three-pointers, in this game, they took 46 of them. So they shot very well from the field. So 32 points from Jaylen Brown, as I mentioned. He shot 12 of 18 from the field. Jason Tatum was 7 for 19 from the field. So, all the Boston fans are talking about Jason Tatum this, Jason Tatum that. So far, this team has sort of been playing more like a team than Jason Tatum's team. I can't even tell whose team this is at this point. It could be Derek White's team for all we know. It could be Jaylen Brown's team for all we know. These guys are good. And the fact that Jason Tatum hasn't been getting talked about in the postseason for how bad he's been playing, wonder how that's going to change. I'm not going to talk down on him because I don't want to do that. But given how a lot of people, I feel like Jason Tatum is arguably one of the more overrated superstars in this league, because other than constantly going to the Western Conference Finals, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't won anything important in the league. And obviously he's still a great player and he's still one of the best forwards that the NBA has. But in terms of accomplishments and things of that nature, I don't think he's done enough to sort of gain the credit that a lot of people have started to give him. And the reason, I understand, making Eastern Conference Finals appearances all the time is no joke. I'm not trying to diminish that whatsoever. But he does have a very, very competent team every single time he's gone to the Eastern Conference Finals. So it's not like he's just carrying the team all the way there. The team is holding up their own end of the bargain, and he's just playing well while they're doing it. And he's always had a good team with the Boston Celtics. So the fact that he's always been on a good team sort of like skews the entire narrative of like, oh, it's Jason Tatum's team and things of that nature, making it seem like Tatum is the sole reason why this Boston Celtics team is so successful and has been successful for a couple of years. I mean, if you want to call it successful. Granted, they haven't won an NBA championship yet since 2008, and with these Celtics teams that they've had, they've been selected to be the favorites multiple times. This is their best team that they've had with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in a while. Well, not in a while, like I think ever. And if they don't make it to the finals, and if they don't win the finals, it's going to be another huge disappointment for the Celtics team. Just going to throw that out there. So now for the Cavs, and on the Cavaliers side, Donovan Mitchell, he ended the game with 33 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. Evan Mobley, he ended the game with 17 points and 13 rebounds. Darius Garland, he only ended with 14 points in this game, and that was basically it in terms of scoring for the Cavs. And the team shot 11 for 42 from 3, which was 26%. They shot worse than the Celtics from 3, and while taking nearly as many threes. And obviously, like, you're not going to win basketball. Like, you're not going to win against the Celtics if you're not playing as efficiently and as perfectly as you possibly can. And the rest of the players on the Cavs, they also shot very poorly. I mean, Okoro shot 4 for 11 points. Max Strus shot 2 for 8, 5 points. Karis LeVert went 2 for 6, 4 points. Niang, 0 for 2. And let's see, who else on those ones? Sam Merrill, 0 for 5. Marcus Morris, 1 for 3. They all shot rather poorly, and it was really, really unfortunate for the Cavs that they couldn't end up winning in this game. And it was really never close. Like, honestly, it was just never close. So I don't really think there's much that needs to be talked about this game, and I'm going to go into a break a little bit early because there are some people that need to sort of use this podcast room for their own reasons, which are like pictures. So unfortunately, I am going to have to go into a break right now just to allow them to sort of take the pictures and like allow them to do what it is that they need to do and get out of the room. And then I'll be able to continue with the third segment, which is going to be talking about Austin Rivers and his comments directed towards, or his comments about NBA players being able to play in the NFL. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that, and J.J. Watt's response to that, because J.J. Watt tweeted a response that I think is worth listening to. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Thank you so much for tuning into the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that longer than usual wait. It's just, the pictures. I mean, it's graduation pictures, and they also host a podcast of their own, and I really didn't feel like it would really be unfair to sort of impose on them in that nature. And it was only a few minutes, and it got them out quickly, so I apologize for the longer than normal wait. Let's go right into the third segment, which is going to be talking about the comments on what Austin Rivers had to say about NBA players and NFL players. So the quote is, "I can take 30 players right now in the NBA, throw them in the NFL. You cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA." So that was his quote. And the second half of that statement, where he says you cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA, that is 100% true. You cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA. Why? Height difference. There is a huge height difference in NBA players compared to NFL players and literally everybody else. And literally, the biggest difference is just that height. I mean, Steph Curry makes George Kittle look like a toddler, and George Kittle is on the football field, he looks huge compared to everybody else, but around Steph, he just looks like a normal person. And that second half of that statement, I think that's 100% true. You cannot take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA, because there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of running back and forth, and in the NFL, there is a lot of running. I'm not saying that there isn't, but there isn't huge pauses in that running. Well, there's huge pauses in the running, excuse me. But in the NBA, it's you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth every single time, and you really need to have good lungs for that kind of thing. And you can't really sit a player out as the game continues until the play is dead. And where in football, it's if you're tired on one down, you can go ahead and rest for 2 downs and then come back in and go in for the fourth down. And let's say you need to convert a 4th and 1, you can go in for that. So in terms of the stamina that it takes for the NBA, it's going to be odd for them to adjust. I do think they'll still be able to adjust, because these athletes are still top-tier athletes at the end of the day. And a lot of them also do track and field to make sure that, growing up as, they're in college and in high school, a lot of football players, they do track and field over when the football season is over, just to make sure that they're in shape and to make sure that they still have that good cardio going. And I really think that stamina wouldn't be that much of an issue when looking into that. But actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and bring up J.J. Watt's response to Austin on Twitter. So he tweeted, "You don't have a job in either right now. Go ahead and try it." And obviously, if that isn't one of the most fire comebacks you've ever heard in your life, I don't know what is, because that was quick to the point. I mean, obviously, no NFL athlete is going to tolerate that kind of level of disrespect. But, I mean, there is some kind of truth to his statement. I've seen clips of NBA athletes making football plays look like child's play. And not to mention, the NBA players, since they have good cardio and since they are able to run, since they are used to running and things of that nature, positions like the wide receiver, linebacker, and safety, and all those other skill positions, kick return, things of that nature, that would be perfect for especially wide receiver. Wide receiver or tight end would be a perfect position for a lot of NBA players right now. And another thing to take note of is how big the NFL rosters actually are. So NFL rosters, they contain a lot of players, and among those players, some of them don't even get any snaps. you can't tell me that not an NBA athlete can even make it to one of those spots on the team. Like, there's a lot of slots available compared to like in the NBA where there's only like a very few spots available. And on top of that, again, height difference. I mean, all the there's a huge height difference with the NBA and the NFL. So if, let's say, let me think of someone. Let me think. Someone who's fast and someone who's... It's really difficult to come up with a really good... Because, like, I'm used to seeing them play basketball, and I'm trying to think how they would translate on an NFL field. Obviously, like, I don't want to say LeBron, because we all know that LeBron has a history of playing football in high school. So I don't really want to say that because it's kind of a little bit unfair. But I do think that someone like DeMar DeRozan, I think he would be a very good option at wide receiver. Somebody like and LeBron obviously would be a pretty good tight end. I mean, the only real position that I don't think NBA players can play is linemen, and that's because like linemen, they're usually like really, really big, and a lot of the NBA players are in shape. They aren't like, I mean, the only NBA player that I could think of is Shaq that could play lineman with ease, and even then, I don't even think he'd be able to do that because. And now, I'm trying really, really hard right now to give credit to both sides because I don't want to definitively say, I don't think that like NBA players can just, you take them, boom, put them in the NFL, they're going to be good. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, completely different sport, completely different rules, have to get used to it. I mean, Michael Jordan, like they got plastered into baseball and he wasn't as good in baseball, so there's no real telling. And it's just, I'm talking from more of a technical standpoint. When you look at their heights and if you give them the NFL training that all of these other players are given, I think they will be able to succeed. I mean, honestly, imagine having Victor at small forward. Not small forward. Imagine having Victor at wide receiver. Like, he would, and catching the ball, like, you could just throw the ball up in the air and he just boop. And but one thing that, the only reason why I think that Austin Rivers' statement is half right is because of the NFL's physicality. And the way that these NBA players have been playing, where they just, they flop and they, like, try to get themselves to go to the line after, like, something like this were to happen to them. Like, there's a picture of Embiid flopping after Karl Anthony Towns just puts his finger on it like this. And I just thought it was really, really funny. But there is a graphic on that. You guys can go ahead and look that up. Well, there's a picture. You guys can go ahead and look it up if you want. But essentially, like, with the way that they act when something like that happens, imagine how they're going to act when somebody stiff arms them or if somebody, like, tackles them with their shoulder. I mean, granted, now the NFL is sort of like easing up on the rules and mitigating tackles to the point where they just revamp tackles entirely. So maybe now with the revamped tackles, I mean, it's not really, I don't even think it's tackling now. Maybe they could. I mean, because the tackling rules in the NFL, they've become a little bit softer now with this new change with the NFL. If you guys are interested in listening to more about that change, why don't you guys go ahead and check out the GSMC football podcast where Kenneth is the host. He does a really good job in breaking down everything with football. We also have a Chip Shot football podcast as well, and I'm sure he was talking about the rule change in the NFL. Manny, he does the Chip Shot football podcast. There's also Jeremy who does another podcast on the show as well, so go ahead and check out his podcast, and TJ as well, who does the podcast directly after me. He covers football as well, and go ahead and check out their podcast, see what they had to say about the NFL and the hip drop tackles, because I'm trying to focus more on basketball than I am about football, even though this is a story about both. But that half of the statement where he says that you can put 30 NBA players into the NFL, I think that's the incorrect statement. Because like, I mean, you have a better chance that 30 NBA players will be able to succeed in the NFL compared to putting 30 NFL players in the NBA. That's for sure. But saying you can, I don't think that's entirely true. So I don't agree with that first statement. But the second statement, saying that you can't take 30 NFL players and put them in the NBA, I believe that is 100% true. The big difference is the height difference. Because, like, again, imagine if you like put Tyreek Hill in an NBA game. He's gonna look like a toddler. I mean, he already looks like rather short compared to everybody else that defends him in the NFL, and like everybody else, like he does seem rather short. But then imagine just how short he's going to look like in front of like 6'4" point guards, or in front of Victor Wembanyama of all people. Like that's the only part of the statement for Austin that I genuinely agree on. However, there are clips of like these NBA players performing NFL feats with ease. Like I saw DeMar DeRozan in a clip. He threw like a 60-yard bomb or like a 50-yard bomb like with the football, and it was a dot too. Like that was a very impressive throw, and it was like it gives off the impression that NBA athletes, like overall, they are the best athletes, because it's like they have the height, they have the cardio, they have the strength, they have the footwork, they have the hand-eye coordination, they have all of this. Granted, you need all of that in every other sport. I'm not saying that you don't need all of that in every other sport, but it's really like the biggest difference is also the height and the fact that they're still as athletic and nimble with all that height. So that's all I really have to say about these comments and what Austin Rivers had to say, as well as like what I think. So I think he's half right. But with that, we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where we talk about Rookie of the Year. It was announced yesterday, right after my show segment. And if you guys paid attention, I said we had to see if Victor Wembanyama won Defensive Player of the Year. And boom, NBA listened to me. So I will be right back after this short break to go ahead and talk about Defensive Player of the Year. Short break this time, I promise.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I told you it was going to be a short break. So, in this fourth segment, we're going to talk about Rudy Gobert winning the Defensive Player of the Year. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Victor got robbed. I am not going to sugarcoat it. I think Victor Wembanyama got robbed of this award. And that's not saying that I don't think that That's not saying that I don't understand why Rudy Gobert won it, because I totally do. And he won it based off of the team's overall defensive ratings and like just how good the team has been defensively, mainly because of him. Like I've said several times before, it's no coincidence that the Utah Jazz were ranked number one defensive team when he was on there, and now he's on the Timberwolves, and the Timberwolves are also ranked the number one defensive team. So he's bringing that defensive value to the team, no doubt about it. But this isn't MVP. This is not the most valuable defender award. This is Defensive Player of the Year. And when you're looking at MVP, you have to look at like every other award differently, because MVP takes into account team success and winning. And because of that, that sort of like hinders a lot of great players that like sort of, even though they might be the best player in the NBA, they might not win the MVP because their team is has a worse record than another guy who is the best player on the best team. Because that's essentially, to break it down, MVP goes to the best player on the best team, because that's how you generate value, by generating wins. And it makes total sense for that award to be like to take team accomplishments into consideration. So, but defensive player of the year, it's not most valuable defender of the year. It's just defensive player of the year. Meaning that like, who was the player that like stood out the most on defense this year? It could be interpreted that way. That's not how the voting works, obviously, given how Rudy Gobert ended up winning this. But to sort of argue Victor's case, I mean, Victor averaged 3.7 blocks after the All-Star break. And directly after All-Star break, in the games like directly after, he averaged 4, like well over 4. And on top of that, he has already earned the respect of veteran NBA players when they're at the rim. Like, already you can see the amount of... I've seen Victor stop 1-on-3 fast breaks. I've seen Victor stop people from taking wide open layups just because of the fear that he might be able to get that block. And when I see that, it's like, how is he not the defensive player of the year? Teams are literally getting scared of a 1-on-3 situation just because Victor is in the paint. And the big play that really changed my mind was when Chris Braun dunked on Rudy Gobert. So if you guys don't remember, earlier in the regular season, the Spurs, they played, well, not that early, but like after All-Star break in the regular season, the Spurs, they played the Denver Nuggets in a game, and Braun was going up for a while. Braun was about to take a wide open layup. It looked like he had a wide open layup. There was nobody in front of him. The only person behind him was Victor Wembanyama, and even then there was still a few steps until Victor would be able to catch up to him. Instead of going up for that layup, he decides to run around the basket. Like, he does not attempt the layup despite Victor being behind him. Like, few steps behind him, I should point out to you. And he passed to MPJ. Luckily enough, MPJ ended up making the shot in the end, so it was a good decision by him not to go up with that layup. But it was the entire crowd and everybody was very surprised that he did not even attempt a layup there. But when Rudy Gobert, he saw Rudy Gobert dead center in the paint, directly under the basket, dead center in the paint on a break. He says, I'm going to just dunk on him. And then dunks on him. And he wasn't scared of Rudy Gobert whatsoever. He just went up. And like when I saw that, I was like, maybe it's not so far-fetched calling Victor Wembanyama the defensive player of the year. Because, like, think about it. The defensive player of the year was in front of him. He wasn't scared to go up. And he dunked on him. A rookie, Victor Wembanyama, behind him, looks like he was about to chase him down. And even just the slightest hint that he was going to go for that chase down, he goes the other way and he gets scared. Like, that is like, if you want to talk about value, that is ridiculous value. And he's not the only player that passed up open layups like this, by the way. He is far from the only player that passed up these open layups. I mean, there have been, again, like I said, there have been several teams to have 1-on-3 fast breaks with Victor in the paint, and they just don't go up. They just don't decide to take any shots in the paint. They would rather settle for the corner three, if anything. And still, Victor somehow finds a way to close out sometimes. But if you're looking for value, I feel like that right there is very valuable. I mean, like, that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's a whole YouTube compilation of NBA players refusing to take wide open layups because Victor is around the area. And it's really unfair because Victor can only control the defense so much, because since most of the time he is in the paint, he can't be out there defending the perimeter, and it's not really his job to defend the perimeter. I mean, he certainly can, but it's not really his job to do that. And he can't control how good or how bad his teammates play on defense. So it's really, like, not fair to just base the that's sort of why Defensive Player of the Year is sort of unfair to, like, be for it to be a team, or for it to consider team accomplishments or, like, team accolades, things of that nature. I don't think it's the right award to do that for. MVP is completely different, but Defensive Player of the Year, I don't think that's the right award to where you should be doing that kind of thing. That's just me, however, because it's like, again, he has no control over how well the other players out on the perimeter play. He has absolutely no control over that whatsoever. And neither does Rudy as well. And, like, I would be making that same argument for Rudy, and, like, how he doesn't, like, he can't really control what the perimeter players are doing on the Timberwolves, and it might just be that the Timberwolves just have a lot better perimeter defenders, which allowed them to get that defensive rating to number 1. But the one thing that's preventing me from saying that is that this isn't the first team that Gobert has been on where they were ranked number 1 defensively. I mean, there's just too much proof in the pudding for Rudy Gobert's case. And the fact that, like, you know, the team success, it really goes a long way for a lot of these awards. But my opinion, I think Victor Wembanyama should have won it. I think Rudy Gobert, like, robbed him of this award. Granted, I understand why he won the award. I just don't think he should have won it over Victor Wembanyama. That's just my personal opinion on that, and that's really, like, but let me know what you guys think about Rudy Gobert winning it in the excuse me. Let me know what you guys think about Rudy Gobert winning it in the comments. With this Defensive Player of the Year, he now becomes one of 3 players to win Defensive Player of the Year 4 times. And one of the other players to do that was Mutombo, and the other player was Ben Wallace. And obviously, like, with him being in that conversation, having 4 DPOYs, which is the most in NBA history, winning 4 DPOYs, he right now is in that same argument with Dikembe and Ben Wallace as one of the best big men defenders in the NBA, like in NBA history, in fact. And call me crazy, I don't see it. I don't know what it is. I don't see it. I cannot put Rudy Gobert on that same level as Dikembe and Ben Wallace. I just cannot. Like, I don't know if I'm crazy for thinking that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, but I cannot put Rudy Gobert at the same level as Dikembe and Ben Wallace for, like, defensively. I just can't. Dikembe and Ben Wallace, they played in an era that was dominated by centers. And, like, there were so many elite centers that they had to defend just to be able to, like, just to be able to even be in consideration for this award. And not only that, but there were also much more centers that were also in the conversation of winning these awards. And I mean, like, Ben Wallace, he guarded Shaq. I mean, like, he was able to guard Shaq. He blocked Shaq. Like, and on top of that, there's so many, like, other great big men that they matched up against, and like their sole purpose was to play defense on it. And I cannot put Rudy Gobert on that same level, especially when Jokic is dropping like when Jokic has a history of dropping 40-plus points on Rudy Gobert's head. I don't know what it is. I cannot put him on that same level as those two. But let me know if I'm crazy for thinking that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is Rudy Gobert on the same level as Ben Wallace, as Dikembe Mutombo, now that he has 4 Defensive Player of the Years, same as they do? Or is that not the case? Again, I have a very difficult time seeing it, but who knows? I want to know what you guys think. But with that, that's the end of this segment, and that is the end of the show for today. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as per usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is basically it for the show. Be sure to tune into those podcasts that I was talking about earlier as well. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.